What we need AI to do is to get us out of some of these meetings we keep having. AI has not yet helped get me more time at keyboard. And that's what I need in order to do my job better and write better features and do more innovation.
This is Test Case Scenario with me, your host, Jason Baum. This podcast is the definitive hub for knowledge and stories in the software testing and development communities. If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button and let's dive straight into the episode. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Test Case Scenario. I'm your host, Jason Baum, and with me as usual, co-host Marcus Merrell. Hey Marcus.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
My count, I'm like 7 or 8 weeks in a row with pretty much predictable background. I'm in the same place, man.
Predictable background. We're going to need you to go on the road for this podcast. We're going to have to start sending you somewhere. Does the podcast have budget for that?
I'll be in Detroit this time next week, so maybe.
All right.
Maybe I'll be there.
Oh, there you go. We'll have to do a show from Detroit. Well, we've got an exciting topic today and more of the same from last week's episode. If you've been paying attention, we've been talking about the DORA report, the DORA Accelerate State of DevOps report that came out not so long ago. And we spoke to Titus Fortner about that last week. We talked about AI's role in software development and some promises that were made, and were the promises kept? I don't know. You'll have to go back and listen to that episode. Marcus and I saw an article by Mike Vizard. It touched on a similar report that was done by Harness. Harness just put out a report called the State of Software Delivery Report, Developers Excited by Promise of AI to Combat Burnout, but Security and Governance Gaps Persist. That's not the name of the report. That's the name of the article. They released the report, State of Software Delivery Report, Beyond Code Gen, the Role of AI in the SDLC. And the report highlights AI's potential to significantly reduce developer burnout and improve productivity, while also addressing challenges organizations face in securely and effectively managing AI-generated code. And as we were reviewing this article and this report, surveyed 500 engineering leaders and developers. Of those, they said that there was $8 million in lost productivity per 250 developers annually, with 78% of developers spending at least 30% of their time on manual, repetitive tasks instead of delivering on innovation. Key findings of the report: 95% of engineering leaders and 98% of developers believe AI tools could greatly reduce burnout. However, 92% of developers report AI increases the blast radius from bad code reaching production. 67% of developers said they spent more time debugging AI-generated code, and 68% spent more time resolving AI-related security vulnerabilities. 59% of developers experienced deployment errors at least half of the time when using AI tools.
As a tester, it is hard not to have a tiny bit of schadenfreude about that. I mean, we absolutely saw this coming. And I know it's early days and this is the worst it's ever going to be, and all those cliches that you throw out there. But like, this stuff was supposed to already start paying off by now. They've already fired everyone. So why isn't it working, right? One thing that I think is amazing, I heard this pointed out at some conference I was at. It's supposed to be a 30% developer productivity. The assumption is that that's 30% applies to the time developers spend writing code, which according to, I know it's an old reference at this point, but Peopleware by DeMarco and Lister, that's already only 20% of their day is writing code. So you're giving them a 30% productivity boost on 20% of their time, which means you go from 20 to 26%. And now the data coming out in 2 separate reports say that we're actually whittling away at even that. What we need AI to do is to get us out of some of these meetings we keep having. We're in so many meetings, AI has not yet helped get me more time at keyboard. And that's what I need in order to do my job better and write better features and do more innovation. Get me to the keyboard. And AI hasn't helped with that.
So what you're saying is we need a clone. We need a AI clone of ourselves
To sit in the
to sit
meeting
in meetings and
and
mundane stuff.
right, give me a 4 sentence chat GPT summary of the action items that I got out of that meeting, which is probably only ever 4 sentences worth of material anyway.
Well, I mean, do you have an AI note taker, Marcus?
I think I don't actually. I don't think we got that approved yet.
That's probably a good use of AI.
Spot on. And it's really, really good at summarizing things. It's really good at, making things crisp and putting them into bullet points and stuff like that. What it's not good at is synthesizing new things. How in the world is that going to increase productivity? I can tell you how it should be used, which is, I think a lot of people that are getting productivity out of it are doing things like, give me this YAML file in this format that will work against this other integration or service that I'm trying to use. It's magnificent at that kind of stuff. But what I think managers want to do is like, I want this to replace the hardest part of the developer's job when they should be replacing the easiest part of the developer's job.
Besides your initial take on, yeah, we knew this was going to happen, which I by the way, the more I'm around testers, I feel like that you say that about everything. You could have always mitigated. Yeah, I saw this coming. When I throw the number like 92% of developers report that AI increases the blast radius from bad code reaching production, or 67% say they spend more time debugging AI generated code. Where do you go to with that? Could you imagine, like, if you were testing right now, if you were in the field, how would you feel about AI generated code, and how would you feel about the process that's sort of in place right now where we have so much of that?
Personally, how I would handle this is maybe a little different from how some people would, but I think it's actually decent advice, which is I would climb to the top of this mountain. I would become the expert's expert on how our developers were using AI so that I could get ahead of any problems that might be created from them. That's how I would do it. I wouldn't sit back and wait for, the prediction to come true. I would make sure that I am in the forefront of helping people make sure that they're able to anticipate and help solve these problems and warn about them and, put the risk factors in front of my management to know that, to make sure that they understand this isn't going to just be a thing you put coins into and out comes code.
Now that's advice for the tester. What about the engineering leader? What about those in leadership positions? What are you going to tell them?
I would definitely try to roll it out slowly and have a policy before I start rolling out at all. And this is something that I don't think you can really enforce, but you could do culturally. Is I would want to make sure that when a developer of mine uses a snippet of code that's been generated by one of these tools, they put in the comment, here's the prompt I used to get this tool, and here are the changes I had to make in order to make sure it worked right. I think that we should strive, and I'm just going to make up a term if it's made up, is I think we ought to strive in social media, in presentations, in thought leadership, in code and everything for prompt transparency. What version and what was the prompt that you used to create this output? I've started to do that in all of my presentations now. Whenever I have an AI generated image that I use, like give me a picture of 3 robots that are punching each other like the Three Stooges, and I'll copy that prompt and paste it into the speaker notes along with the GPT model I'm actually using to produce it. And I think that using that kind of trail of breadcrumbs would help us understand which models are doing better, which ones are doing worse, where can they be helped. And that's what I would say is for my leadership. I don't want people to just vaguely use the tools. I want to know, where are they falling down? When is it inhibiting their time? And I would not roll it out to everyone at once. I would roll it out to a small group of people of mixed background, mixed experience levels, to make sure that we understand what people are getting out of it and where the risks are. I don't want to create a whole bunch of overhead for those folks, but if I've introduced AI to them, I've already introduced a lot of overhead, it turns out. Let's use that for productivity. Like let's use that in a productive, constructive way.
But what we're seeing from these reports is perhaps we ran before we could walk. And the promise seemed great, right? We're going to reduce all this time and it's going to be amazing and you'll never have to do the mundane again. It's like, I don't know. I was always taught if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And this isn't the fault of ChatGPT. This isn't the fault of all of the various AI tools that are out there, not to call out one. This isn't the fault of OpenAI. This is the fault of us, right? As leadership saying, hey, We're going to use this tool and we're going to get there faster. Bottom line, right?
Like we talked about for the New Year's resolutions episode, I'm trying to be more deliberately positive in my life and try not to be quite so skeptical about everything. But like, you got to ask some questions and you got to start to think, is this a con? Is this a grift? Is there a financial interest from the person who's trying to sell me this product that is beyond just getting me to sign up for a contract? Like, I simply just cannot believe that in the year 2025, we're still falling for the hype to this degree. I mean, luckily, it'll never happen again. We've learned our lesson this time, right?
Yeah. I think the point I'm trying to make isn't that it's hype over reality, even though obviously there are tons of tools out there that are kind of, like you said, they're the snake oil and they're just latching on to a trend. For sure, we saw it with Web3. Despite however you may feel about Web3, crypto, there certainly are a lot of scams, right? In addition to perhaps some real companies out there in addition to them. I don't think that's all of the issue here. I think a lot of the issue is just the state of which perhaps the technology is at and where our hopes of where it's at didn't mesh, right?
Is it possible that we are just in denial that these problems are easily solvable? Like, the software problems are fundamentally both the same and different from the way what the software problems were 30 years ago when I first got into the industry. Software problems are, it's almost like they're the same thing, but faster. We're having the same problems that we ever had. Communication, siloed teams, we just have them faster because everything is going faster. Instead of having those problems over a 9-month release cycle, we now have the same level of problems over a 2-week release cycle. And management is desperate both to protect their jobs and to find the silver bullet. And there's a good chance that by the time the chickens come back home to roost on a decision that you made now, you're not going to be there anymore to absorb the accountability. And the next person gets to be a hero and clean up your mess, but you're off being a hero cleaning someone else's mess. So it doesn't matter. The average tenure of the tech ecosystem is something like 2 years. So this is just a carousel that we all ride. We want a silver bullet that is not forthcoming.
Are you saying this is a human issue, not an AI issue?
Yeah, shockingly, I'm proposing that this is a problem that people have, that people need to solve.
I'm going to ask ChatGPT how to solve it. Now we just went in a full circle.
Can't wait to hear what they say. Because my bet is ChatGPT is going to agree and still offer a solution that doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah. Well, when you look at all the issues of bad code, is that the fault of the AI or is that the fault of the developer who's like not catching it?
Well, certainly the second. The developer should always be accountable for the code that they put in. Like whether or not they generated the code, they put it into production or they entered it into the ledger. At this point, that may change, but at this point, that's still true. But I also think that people are assuming that ChatGPT or whatever GPT or Copilot we're doing, like you, I don't mean to keep throwing OpenAI into this. It's not just that. We do a lot of assumption that it knows code. It doesn't know code. It knows probability and the data it was trained upon. And if you are like most developers that I know who believe that every other line of code that every other developer ever wrote was garbage, that's the data it was trained on, man. It's going to be buggy.
The other piece of what this survey went into was the governance and compliance alarms that are going off.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So some of these stats are pretty nuts. That is probably the biggest issue, actually.
Yeah.
Only 48% of developers use IT-approved AI tools. So the majority are not. 60% of organizations lack formal process for assessing AI-generated code vulnerabilities or errors. 58% of companies do not provide clear guidance on which use cases are low risk for AI adoption. And 60% of engineering leaders and developers stated they do not currently evaluate the effectiveness of the AI coding tools, making productivity gains unclear.
Because a year and a half ago, we were all eager to play with these things until we realized the kind of limits of their capabilities.
Remember back in like 2022 when this came out, the biggest worry, the biggest concern I remember reading about was teachers saying all the kids are going to cheat on the tests. It's almost like, hey, it's like the calculator. Everybody's bringing the calculator to the math test kind of thing. And now it's like, no, the biggest threat is only 48% being compliant.
Yeah. What was that interesting, like putting a dollar amount on it? It
Oh
was,
yeah. So the dollar amount that they put on it was 8 million in lost productivity per 250 developers annually.
and not only that, but that's not including the fact that they pay for the privilege of having an enterprise license that lets them spend an extra $8 million. Then you add that to my subprime crisis hypothesis, and the prices are going to start going up, up and up and
Yep.
up. And so we're going to be paying more and more and more for the privilege of costing ourselves $8 million per 250 developers. Now, who knows if that's accurate or not? Who knows if that will be accurate? I can hear the AI people in the audience already screaming and pulling their hair out saying, this is the worst it's ever going to be. This is the worst it's ever going to be. It's only going to get better from here. First of all, prove it. It took 50 times the amount of electricity and training data to train GPT-4 over 3.5, and the improvement was only marginal. Fight me. And so I don't believe it anymore, the hypothesis that this is only going to get better, because the generative AI, I called it, and I didn't call it. I regurgitated somebody else calling it, that we've peaked already in its capabilities. What's going to improve is the ergonomics around it that groups up what it outputs and makes them better. That's what's going to improve things, agentic and all those things. That's what's going to improve it at this point. Let's stop pretending that the generative part itself is going to make a night and day difference, no matter how much data we throw at it.
Well, let me take that and like throw another spin on it. It's not necessarily that. I don't know if the argument is this is the worst it's going to be. It's only going to get better than from here. If that I know I've heard that too, and that's what you see out there. I don't think we have a choice. Once you let the cat out of the bag, so to speak, we're in the future of AI now. Like every year that goes by, every day it's only going to be more various versions of, and it's just going to keep coming. And so how we utilize it, I think, is going to change. So I think we're going to learn. Like we have to learn appropriate uses of it. We have to learn how to talk to it. We have to learn how to digest the information that it's giving us in a way that we're not losing productivity, but where it becomes a net positive. So I think it will get better, but I think it's an evolutionary process. We're at the very beginning. We're at the dawn of civilization here. We have a long way to go.
I would hypothesize that for you, me, and Titus, all of us, it has been a net positive for us because we think critically and we don't overhype. We understand what it's good at, and we don't use it for things that we know it's not good at. And I'm asking that kind of at the executive level, not at the practitioner level. So, I mean, I agree with you. There are improvements, and this thing will be kind of amazing. It's just that right now, the hype cycle we're in and the grift that we're being sold is so far disproportionate from what we're seeing in reality. I just want people to shut the hell up for a little while and let us actually try to figure out what it's good for.
I agree with you. So that we'll have more on this topic. I am sure this is not going to be the last time we talk about it. Hey, this is definitely not going to be the last time we talk about AI on this show. I think we started this show talking about AI. So it's just interesting to see now it's been prevalent for the past few years and all the promises made and all the leadership, hedging their bets significantly on it, what the reports are now after, it's been out. So we'll see where it goes. And we'll be here to talk about it. So Marcus, thanks so much. As usual, looking forward to doing this again next week with you. And thank you for listening. And we will see you next time for another episode of Test Case Scenario. Thank you for joining us on Test Case Scenario. Share your thoughts in the comments. We'll make sure to respond to each and every single one. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell to keep in touch. If you missed our last episode, it's popping up on your screen right now. Go, click it. Until next time on Test Case Scenario.